Good morning, everybody. Chester RP Church Devotional Podcast. Here's Mitch. Let's get started.
All the way my Savior leads me, cheers each winding path I tread, gives me grace for every trial, feeds me with the living bread.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today as we get started. Isaiah chapter 36, moving into a section in the book of Isaiah where we talk about how God is going to deliver his people. Up to this point, we've heard God say multiple times, you need to trust me. You don't need to trust the Assyrians. You don't need to trust the Egyptians. You need to trust me to deliver you. Chapters 36 through 39 in the book of Isaiah is a historical account where we see God actually deliver his people. And so I'm going to begin reading for us in chapter 36, beginning in verse 1. We'll take this in steps over the next couple days, but I think it's an important position, an important passage for us to read together here this morning. So Isaiah chapter 36, beginning in verse 1. Here we go. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, King Sennacherib of Assyria attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. Then the king of Assyria sent his royal spokesman along with a massive army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. The Assyrians stood near the conduit of the upper pool by the road to the launderer's field. Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna, the court secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the court historians, came out to meet him. The royal spokesman said to them, "Tell King Hezekiah, the great king, the king of Assyria, says, what are you relying on? You think mere words are strategy and strength for war? Who are you now relying on that you have rebelled against me? Look, you are relying on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff that will pierce the hand of anyone who grabs it and leans on it. This is how Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who rely upon him. Suppose you say to me, we rely upon the Lord our God. Isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you are to worship at this altar? Now make a deal with my master, king of Assyria, and I'll give you 2,000 horses if you're able to supply riders for them. How then can you drive back a single officer among the least of my master's servants? How can you rely upon Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Have I attacked this land to destroy it without the Lord's approval? The Lord said to me, attack this land and destroy it." Now we'll stop right there because that's the interaction of the court servant, the servant of King Sennacherib, to the servants of King Hezekiah. The Assyrians have invaded. They've taken down the cities, Lachish, and then now they're sending a great army and messenger to Jerusalem to say to King Hezekiah, hey, listen, you need to give us the land. You need to give us Jerusalem. Not just saying it to King Hezekiah, saying it to the people there with King Hezekiah who have gathered around Jerusalem to protect the king's city, to protect their capital city. Two things from this passage I think are very important for us. Number one, in the official from Sennacherib, the Assyrian official's letter or statement to the officials of King Hezekiah's court, he says this, the great king of Assyria says this, what are you relying on? You think mere words are strategy and strength for war? Who are you now relying on that you have rebelled against me? Look, you are relying on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff that will pierce the hand of anyone who grabs it and leans on it. King Hezekiah, it's no secret in the study of Isaiah, we've seen this. King Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem are relying upon the strength of the Egyptians to deliver them from the hand of the Assyrians. The problem is that they've created a treaty and they've entered into a treaty and they're relying upon a treaty with a nation that is not able to keep it or will not keep it. The spokesman for King Sennacherib of the Assyrians calls Egypt a splintered reed that will pierce the hand of all who grab a hold of it and lean on it. Think about a walking stick leaning on it and it will pierce the hand. Egypt is not trustworthy. And that's what God's been telling the people of God, and he's been telling Hezekiah through Isaiah all along. These people are not trustworthy. You cannot trust them. You cannot stand upon their word. And yet they've chosen to rely upon them, and now they're at a crisis moment. And in this crisis moment, God is using this foreign Gentile messenger to question them and to put to them the question of faith. Are you going to rely upon Egypt? Really? That's who you're going to rely upon? They're going to turn on you. The question for all of us is, are you going to rely upon Egypt or some other person or some other thing to deliver you, or are you going to rely upon God? Whose word are you going to take? That's God's question to the people of Israel, to the people of Jerusalem. Then the servant of Assyria says, and are you going to rely upon the Lord? Verse 7, suppose you say to me, rely upon the Lord our God. Isn't this the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you are to worship at this altar? One of the hallmarks of Hezekiah's kingdom, of his reign, is that he brought reform to the worship of God. He took down all the idolatrous, unclean places and the high places that they worship and said, no, we're going to reestablish the worship of God in the temple center. We're going to come where God has said, come worship him. We're going to adhere to his words. We're going to be obedient to his commands. And we're going to worship him as he has said. And so they reestablished the Passovers and the festivals. And they reestablished the tithes and the offerings that are given to take care of the Levites. They reconsecrate themselves to worship God. They fixed the temple up. The king of Syria knows this and says, Hezekiah got rid of all these high places. Are you going to rely upon him? The goal for the king of Assyria is to confuse the people. He wants them to rebel against Hezekiah, their leader. You can submit to me. I'll give you all these things. All the while, he's going to conquer them and move them off. We'll see that tomorrow. But that's what Satan, I should say, does to us. God doesn't do that to us. Satan does that to us. He doesn't want us. He doesn't need us to be these rampant, wild sinners. He just needs us to question the validity of the promise of God. He just needs us to question whether or not we can stand on the promises of God. And so the question of this passage is really twofold. Number one, are you going to rely upon God and trust him at his word, or are you going to rely upon those in the world around you to deliver you who are not trustworthy? And two, are you going to find the clarity of his word to be something upon which you stand, or are you going to allow Satan to come into your life and bring confusion to you? Those are the challenges for us today. I think we have to evaluate and think about Satan doesn't change in the way he attacks, and we know our God doesn't change in his promises of deliverance and the way in which he works. He is steadfast and sure. May we trust him both now and forever. You guys have a great day. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.
You care.